All right. Hello, everyone. You didn't miss much leading up to the opening. I do, however, know that Emily Rand has an SOP on how to watch figure skating legally
Oh
or
yeah.
not. I'm not quite sure. so, yeah, if you want that, hit her up for that. Uh, I'm sure maybe one
Immediately I
person
get the
does.
stream taken down.
Uh, but yeah, so we are back again. There was League of Legends that actually happened. There was like
hmm
this week, quite a bit of League of Legends. If you're a person who doesn't care that much about challengers, we'll make it interesting in some way.
Fun
Yeah,
turn. Like I've been having a lot of fun with the Challengers tournament actually. It's
yeah,
been a good
it
time.
is. It
And
is
there have
pretty
been
fun.
yeah, we'll talk about the upsets. But first,
Yeah, we have to
we'll
talk
talk about
about.
my personal heartbreak.
Oh yeah, I basically did this. I spent all split like hyping up KT and telling Emily they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it, just to shatter her heart in Game 5. It was actually all calculated on my part. You know, I'm just that person.
Did not think they were gonna do it. Especially after game one. I was like, oh okay, like, you know, T1 have found their groove. They have Zeus was like, I would say a little bit shaky for the season, but like really, really stepped up during their playoffs, and then in particular in uh, their regional qualifier run for T1. I still think Owner has been kind of the most consistent performer across the entire split, which is kind of surprising that I haven't seen more people talking about him specifically. Because I feel like he, in my opinion, has kind of been the most like steady and stabilizing presence and like
Yeah, I
consistent,
would agree with that.
again, just consistent performer for them. So I feel like broadcast calling myself out. We need some more gentle owner hype for the start of T1 showing up at Worlds. But yeah, it's really annoying because KT always does this, right? So like after game one, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be a 3-0. Like they're not even gonna show up. It's done. And then they drag it out to 5 games, of course, and then lose. So
And they
you know,
were ahead in Game 5. I thought they were gonna win.
yeah,
I was like there.
it was very annoying.
And then the Yone like
Yeah.
mishap on the, I think it was Rift Herald, or was it Baron
Oh,
already? I think it was Baron.
was
Um,
it fair? I'm trying to think back.
it
All the
was like
games blur together.
it was at least post 50 minutes. But
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
mean, what I did like about that series was actually that Game 2 was really interesting in terms of the plan execution that could have been. Uh, so I thought, like for example, I'm gonna look at the draft so that I can give champion specifics. Again, it has been like a week. But yeah, I thought game
it's
two is interesting because they knew that kind of like their win con is if Skarner gets ahead, enemy cannot kill him or do anything. So they tried to give him 3 quadrant, but I think what needs to happen for that is Rumble just needs to stay in jungle, and Kaisa will like solo push top lane in the lane swap. I think that would have worked out for them because I also liked that they had like the Kaisa TP for the setup, and they would have gone to bot tower, and then they would have been able to push out bot tower, so enemy couldn't like counter invade, and then Skarner would guarantee 3 quadrant. So like I liked some of the stuff they tried to do. I still think like people were really molding about the quality of the series, I think. And I think that was like for me the biggest thing that was unfortunate, but
I mean, people
cuz
were
I enjoyed it,
already
so yeah.
yeah, it was a fun series. I do think like we kind of talked about going in KT and their ability to pick these more like long range pick comps with the Yone, and how BDD had been doing really well on it. And then in game 5, um, like you said, KT were actually in really good spot in that game. But I did like that we saw, the Yone come out from Zeus instead. And then again, the long range pick comp with the Jin Leona and the Lilia. I thought that was really cool to see T1 then bring out and find a solution, which was Faker plays Corki and Zeus plays the Yone. Like, I thought that was really nice to see from them as someone who's been pretty critical of this team's like comp execution overall and how they hadn't really evolved. They also looked better they looked a lot better and more comfortable moving the Ziggs around in the series, which was something that they struggled with. To your point though about quality, people are also molding over the DK T1 series, and I'm not gonna defend these two series as like the height of professional League of Legends, but they were both really fun, and I felt like you could see teams wrapping their head around like their win cons in real time, which is always kind of interesting to watch for me anyway, to see teams figure it out. So that was kind of fun. I think the Worlds patch looks like it will be a lot more of a comfortable spot for T1. And additionally, if we do see fewer lane swaps, I think Zeus is one of those top laners who's going to look way more comfortable in a meta where he can do hard counter picks without worrying necessarily about getting swapped on. So yeah, I'm also like, obviously I'm personally sad about KT because I am a KT fan, regardless of what Kelsey says. Part of being a KT fan is dunking on them. But I do also really like that T1 made it, because I always want the team that is the reigning world champion to have a chance to defend their title at Worlds. I think that's always just a really cool setup, and I like when that happens. And it happens like pretty consistently. I think 2014 it didn't happen, and then there are teams that just like,
it was actually like, for a while it was kind of a narrative that the former world championship wouldn't make it, because I remember like pretty consistently, because you didn't have Samsung White, you didn't have SKT, you didn't have and like 2016 was unironically I think the first year where it happened, because it was back-to-back T1.
And then I know IG got to try to defend in 2019.
Yeah.
Didn't. Samsung also got the chance as KSV to defend in 2018. Did not even make it out of groups. But anyway, it sets up like a lot of really cool stuff narratively, and then since this is the exact same roster, we can see how they've evolved, how they might have regressed. And that's always really cool to talk about from like a broadcast standpoint. So I'm glad that T1 made it for that reason, just because there's so much to talk about with this team. And it's also just really nice to see a team, again, a reigning world champion, be able to show up to the next Worlds and try to defend their title.
Also, the narrative that viewership is saved.
So, unironically, viewership is saved.
But I have a theory that I would like, a completely serious and not at all for fun theory, that I would like your opinion on, which I like to call the Shitium creep. So for those of you who do not know, the Shitium, which apparently makes Emily so sick that she must mute and cough, is basically the opposite of copium, which is the sense of like my favorite team has a chance, right? Like the copium is my favorite team has a chance. Oh, we actually do this thing well. Oh, we're actually like pretty good at this thing. Shitium is the opposite, which is just that everyone is shit. Everyone is terrible. It's like, oh, but this play they did, but they didn't execute it. They're shit. Like all league is shit. There's only one good team. Like the one team region perfect example of the Shitium, because then we got to playoffs and it was like, oh no, but G2 are just shit too. So like once again, this is like the more League progresses, we end up in a feedback loop of the Shitium creep, which is basically just like more and more analysts are getting a positive reinforcement for saying something is terrible and criticizing it. So that's one. More and more people are kind of like understanding the how to articulate like the mechanical nuances of a team fight and also like how the map should be played. And so if it doesn't fit like our image of that thing, because we've gotten a better image of how those things are executed, more and more things look like shit. But the reality is that they are not more shit than they were previously. The Shitium creep is in fact just fabricated and an image that you have in your head, but it is not actually consistent with reality. Teams did not, the quality of League overall did not just get worse. It maybe stayed the same. That's an argument. But the Shitium creep is a lie. Do not fall for the Shitium creep, friends. That is what I'm here to tell you today. Anyway.
I will say, I also think if you just watch a lot of League overall, like, again, it's kind of stacks up in your mind, and you do get to a point where I feel like I get to this point every year, midsummer, where I'm messaging Kelsey, and I'm like, I just think everyone is bad.
Yeah, no.
Which literally happened like this year, right? Like it happened a month ago or something when I messaged you, and I was like, I think everyone's shit. So I mean, I just think that happens as well. But yeah, there's actually, in terms of
I'm definitely
overall,
guilty of the Shitium creep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super guilty. But I also think if you are looking at it more long term, it's actually like demonstrably false, because every year we learn more about the game just overall. And so that makes people more critical, but then it also means that people's understanding of the game is naturally like increased over time. Like if you look at the understanding of the game back in, I mean, even at this point, like looking back towards like 2018, 2019, you'll still see an evolution from then. So anyway.
Yeah, and also
I'm trying to like get into a deep discussion about this. But yeah, I agree, but also I'm like hella guilty of doing that, where I'm just like, oh my god, every team is actually ass.
And I mean, the main thing for me is just if I made like a highlight video, which that's become like the common YouTube currency at the moment, is highlight videos of co-streams. If I made a highlight video and the highlight video was titled, in fact, T1 and KT had some good ideas, it would get way less views than
no one is gonna watch that. Yeah.
T1 versus KT was a sorry excuse for League of Legends.
A shit show.
And you could maybe publish a video that was T1 versus KT was fantastic League of Legends, but that feels more like a lie than T1 versus KT is a complete shit show. So if we're going in absolutes, then maybe absolutes is what gets views, and people are just unwilling to make absolute definitive statements like T1 versus KT is the best league I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Which it was not. So yeah, there's always that.
It was highly entertaining. And again, you can see like I saw a lot of good things out of T1. Like I mentioned, that were really nice solutions to some problems they had been having. And then also I think the World's patch is going to be better for them anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty universally accepted, but we will get to that. Before we do, there was a piece of news that dropped, and I was trying to, because remember last time when I said they couldn't take top 6 mids? But in the same post where it said they couldn't take top 6 mids, people were already saying Yagao is most likely. So I'm trying to understand under what logic Yagao is not, but I didn't mention that because it didn't make any sense to me. It's like, how is Yagao not a top 16 mid, right? So under what logic and under what understanding do we not consider Yagao or JDG a top 6, right? And so if you look at, it's like, well, I guess they didn't make top 6 in the brackets technically, right?
Yeah.
That actually happened. So in fact, he is not a top 16 mid. So that's why Yagao was already speculated. So I think, like, again, the reasoning is, like, LNG were not allowed to, kind of as a compromise, they were not allowed to choose a mid from a top 6 qualifying team. And Yagao was technically the next best one because it's like you can get Hai Chao or Care.
Man, I love Hai Chao. That would have been a banger.
or perhaps can I interest you in a UCal or a UOkai, something along those lines. However, but I think it's like as soon as you make the top 6 designation, however arbitrary it may seem, Yagao ends up being the clear winner. So yeah,
it is arbitrary. It's also like, again, this is kind of similar to how, and if you don't want to speak on this, that's totally fine because you were with the team at the time. But it's kind of similar to the Kaori situation, right? Where it's like, what constitutes an emergency sub? Why didn't Scout tell the team previously? Because then I feel like, you know, they should have been held to the rule of, okay, you need to find the emergency sub, you know.
Yeah.
You can pull, I think the LNG Academy mid is, so his name is like Doing, but I know he is a really big fan of Doinby, so it's like I keep wanting to call him Doin G. Anyway, that I'm pretty sure is the LNG Academy mid. I do not know how good he is. LNG Academy were not a particularly good team from what I can see. I did not watch him in LDL, so maybe someone who has can come out and like inform me. I'd love to know. But you know, if theoretically, if all this actually goes above board, that's what happens, right? Scout lets the team know that he might have a travel ban. They are able to actually do the emergency substitution well above board and prep for visa. Because the other thing, again, you already pointed out how arbitrary the top 6 thing is.
Yeah.
But another reason why Yagao is able to go is because, like, when you apply for visas, they apply for pretty much every team that could potentially go because the visa process takes so long. And Yagao presumably already has a visa to be able to go to Europe. And I think they even mentioned this in the statement where it's like because of visa like you know, the confines of visa restrictions. It's a shit situation. Overall, Scout was like really, really important to how this team played. And Yagao, as much as I love him and will defend him on a lot of things, I don't think is going to fit in as well. We'll see. I don't think he's as shit as people think he is, but I also do not think he is going to step in and immediately perform as well as Scout did for this team. It's also kind of a weird situation for him too, because I know he's getting like eviscerated by the community for his performance already. And now he's going as an emergency sub for LNG when people just really want Scout to go, myself included. So yeah, it is a shit situation. I would love in the future for better clarity on like emergency subs, because this is the second time this has happened and it could get really, really sketchy if this is allowed to continue outside of, like, again, to your point, it just being really arbitrary and being like, well, you can't take from a top 6 team, or like, which pretty much eliminates Rookie, right? Because I think
it also eliminates Shanks. So yeah.
Oh yeah. And Shanks was performing super well. I mean, I would take Rookie because of his experience, but
yeah, it's just they went for 5-6 because 5th and 6th there wasn't like a placement difference. It's like the same, right?
Yeah,
like the 5th and 6th is the same rung. You could have, I guess, eliminated 7th, 8th, then you knock out Yagao and Care. You could have just said a non-playoffs mid. I mean, again, like we could talk a lot about the arbitrary distinction. For me, I was thinking again, like when we were talking about it, because AJDG made regionals, of course they were top 6, but they weren't. So that's what makes it feel even more arbitrary, right? Just because like when we were talking about it, I had just read the Weibo post that morning, and I didn't have like time to kind of sort through rationally whether or not Yagao was a top 6 mate, so I didn't bring it up. But yeah.
I made the same assumption as you,
Yeah.
right? Where I was just going off of championship points as well. And I was like, well, they're in regional final, so obviously Yagao would not be eligible.
Yeah. If so, someone in chat is asking for us to briefly talk about the Scowie lawsuit. Very, very briefly, because we've talked about it in a previous episode, and I'll remember to link it when this one goes to YouTube. But it's TLDR. Scout was given permission under certain circumstances to look for another team, but then he was also not really. That is the TLDR, and like it initially started with him looking to go back to Korea while he was still on EDG. That was like the main catalyst for it, and there's been a lot of it, so it's been going on for a very long time, pretty much since post Worlds 2021. Maybe longer than that, but the summary where we researched it and talked in more detail about like the different sides and read the documents that have been published will be in that episode. And since I don't remember it perfectly, we're not probably going to talk about it in depth here unless Emily has photographic memory. But yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's like a pretty good summation. I think you should go to that episode also because that's where we put out our 50 billion disclaimers about how we're not lawyers and we're just reading off of
that was last episode where we also talked about it, but not like the lawsuit itself. Like last episode, we just talked about why we think it's likely that the court date will be enforced. Which is, that one is TLDR. They already moved the court date once. That's also Scout failed to provide information to LNG in a timely manner that would allow them to move the court date again because he's a gamer and gamers often do things like that. So good times.
I mean, I think there's no malicious intent on Scout's part. I will say that. That is one thing that I think should be stressed. And then in terms of performance, I do think it hampers LNG somewhat just because Scout was such a massive part of how this team played. And so who knows? Like maybe the Worlds patch, Yagao is more comfortable. He fits in well with the team.
I'm also way less down on Yagao's performance than most people are individually. Like people are like, Yagao was a dead weight for Ruler. It's like, okay, maybe in regionals, but for a lot of summer, I thought Yagao performed way better than Ruler personally. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I feel like I am not as high on Yagao as you are, but also kind of a staunch defender of he does not deserve the amount of criticism he is receiving for this team's failure. And I also agree that I think he was better across summer than people give him credit for. Unfortunately, in regionals, he kind of sucked ass. So like I tweeted out like, oh, I'm a toothpaste apologist.
And people are like, what?
I kind of knew this was coming. And people were very confused. They were like, do you not, like, why would you not brush your teeth? And also,
I also recommend that you not try to find Chinese memes with Yagao in them because there are a lot of really sus toothpaste memes in Chinese.
That's unlucky. I will not look for those then. But
good times.
The big thing I think is that his most recent performance was not good. And on top of that, this is an emergency substitution for a player that was like a very crucial part of LNG's success. So we'll see. I have no idea how LNG are going to perform now because I just do not know what this team is going to look like without Scout.
Well, it'll be interesting. I think, even though I'm a huge Yagao defender, Scout was actually my number one performing mid when I did the rankings for summer. And I think LNG functioned very heavily off of their laners just being good at laning, which if you watch Yagao, in detail.
Not his strength.
That's not really his thing.
Nah.
So, do I think it's a good fit? No, but maybe he supports way better. Who knows? Like there was a lot of drama about their relationship at one point, Scout and Wei, but I would assume they've made it work because they qualified for Worlds. But I guess we'll see. Anyway, so that was fun. Do I think it will be good for LNG? No. Do I think it'll make them perform worse? Probably, just because it's not within the system of their team. Do I think it's Yagao's fault that JDG collapsed? No. I think it's easy for people to point to that, but I think a lot of the team had a lot of problems that were not Yagao. And that night probably would not have fixed. So, yay. Well, to move along, we are returning with one of our favorite segments, which is the fashion interlude. And this one, I get Emily to rate fashion items of some kind and comment on them. So we'll do more of these as we get to Worlds, but we've had very few jerseys items drop. So we're just gonna take a look at the current sampling. So this was me being too lazy to get an actually good image of the LPL Worlds jacket, but I know that you have seen it and assessed it and have opinions on it. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I think Linda had a really good tweet. Maybe we can link it in the description where she tweeted out like close-ups of it too, which because it has all of the different places where an LPL team has won Worlds as like patches on the jacket. And it's kind of like a motorcycle jacket. So I think these look really good. I also think I always, and this is a me personal thing, shy away from wearing anything that's that light colored because I will spill something on it, or, you know, let's just say I'm not known for being graceful, and that's a dangerous proposition. I think they can get dirty really easily, but I also think if you like take care of your white clothing, it can look like some of the best clothing you own. And these jackets are like really fun. Like I liked the motorcycle almost look to them. I think that's cool. It's also a little bit different than a lot of the like track jackets we've seen from LPL teams past. But yeah, I don't think there's also something that's like, I don't know how to explain it. In order to have a white garment look really good, you have to keep it really clean. And then additionally, it can also still look very like sparse, which is why I do like the patches on it where it shows like where LPL teams have won. I also think one thing that is not doing them any favors in this picture, but then also in the picture that, again, we can maybe link Linda's tweet on this, but the fit of them, they don't seem to have gotten jackets that like actually fit the players very well. So like Mako, when he's wearing the jacket, looks looks very
probably
bulky.
a disaster for that.
Yeah,
for sure.
It just looks very bulky and awkward. So a lot of this is also down to like fit and the fact that most of the time I feel like gamers don't really care about that.
I don't know. I just assume like baggy jackets are in, but I have no fucking clue. So it's whatever.
I mean, I think so right now, weirdly, like, do you know there's like a specific name for it that I'm blanking on, but like, you know, a jacket you would wear in the winter in like Vermont is the best way I can describe it. It's like a barn jacket. Okay, those are really in.
Banger.
Jackets are kind of cool, but the whole fit looks a little sterile. Yeah, I think like white is going to look sterile, which is kind of part of the point. Again, like I said, you just have to like keep it super clean so it shows up like it really, really pops. I don't actually like white clothing all that much for the reasons I already said, but then also to that point, it can end up looking like kind of empty unless it has like detailing on it. So
I'm just
that's also
saying,
why I don't always like white jerseys either.
people are gonna get Donor and Red Bull on that shit like so
Oh yeah,
fast.
in like 2 seconds. I can already see it happening.
So yeah, bangers. But it's also applicable for pretty much everything else we're looking at. So
Oh, the year of the
hooray!
white jerseys.
Yeah, T1 also white World's jerseys. I think Cadril dropped a video talking about how cool the World's jacket is um, for T1, but this seems to be consistent with what people are saying is the white World's look for T1. So
Yeah. From what I've seen of their jacket, the I think the cool thing about I don't know if they have it on the jerseys. These do look like football jerseys. I agree. I don't know if it looks like the German national team jersey, but they do look like football jerseys. The big thing for me with the jackets that I saw coming out of T1 is I liked the detailing where it had um, the ZOFGK like on it, because again, like celebrating this specific roster that's been together for so long and has already won a world championship going into defending their world championship title, I think is really cool. That's cool detail. You can't see it on these, I don't think, because I think it might be only on the jackets. But again, like let me see if I can't. Did T1 tweet out the jacket? I feel like they would have had
they
to.
did. I mean, Cadril also has a video where he talks about the jacket, so it's definitely out there.
But yeah, I really liked the that detail on it. It also, okay, here we go. I found it. It has a bunch of the coolest thing about this jacket, which is not like, unlike the LPL jackets, it's not a motorcycle jacket. It's almost like a really thick windbreaker, it seems. But again, consistent with a lot of T1 merch, it has the stars for their world's wins. But the coolest thing about this jacket, and I'm glad I pulled this up because I would have forgotten otherwise, the inside has a whole bunch of different photos of the team. So like when you're doing a white garment or like a really sparse like black or white piece of clothing, I really like when there are cool details like this. So when you open it up, it has like all of these pictures on the inside, which is like very, very cool. Actually, one of my favorite pieces of like Riot merch that I've received is a bomber jacket from last year's Worlds, and it has the same thing where like it's kind of a plain black bomber jacket that says like Seoul, South Korea, Worlds 2023. But then when you open it up, it has this really cool image on the inside of like the World's trophy. And it's really bright blue. It's very, very cool. And I really liked this out of T1 because, again, like I said, this is a really big celebration of this specific roster. So I like the ZOFGK. Yes, I'm saying that right. And then I have to like go through their initials. And then on the inside, on the inside, you have like not just this roster, but like historic kind of T1 moments as like a photo collage, which I think is very, very cool. I like that a lot, actually. I like anything that if you have a legacy org, you want to consistently celebrate that legacy, and these jackets do that, which is nice.
All right, we'll do one more, which
maybe we can link this in the description because I'm going to link you the
video
picture I have. And there we go.
Yeah.
Or you can just link to Cadril's video too.
Yeah, everything works. It's fine. Okay, so yeah.
White. Wait, they already had this jersey. This is their World's jersey?
I mean, they said this is their like championship jersey, so that's what they have. I don't know if this is their World's jersey, but the implication from 100 Thieves fans that I saw on Twitter is that they're going with at least for training and practice, they've been consistently, and their content, they've been consistently wearing this. So yeah.
They wore this jersey on stage though, didn't they? For
Yeah, but
the
that's like actually very typical
final.
for NA teams
Yeah.
is you wear your Worlds jersey during your qualification run. But yeah.
I mean, these are fine. They like so for 100 Thieves stuff, like this is an org that historically, as you and I have joked about, like why is it bad that they're called a hoodie org?
Yeah. They did their
because
foundations drop as well, or fundamentals actually. Yeah.
yeah, so I think like maybe my expectations are a little higher. This is a really basic jersey, and unlike the other two we talked about, where like even with the sparse white, there are things in the details that celebrate. Like for the LPL jacket, it's kind of a moto jacket that also celebrates LPL victories through the patches.
Yeah.
With the T1 jacket, it has the initials of the players, and then when you open up, the lining has all of these photos of like historic T1 moments from their previous world championships. This 100 Thieves jersey, like they can put out like such good merch, and this is not one of them.
It's clean.
Sorry,
it's just
Thieves.
got the gold
stripes.
stripes.
It is clean. It has the gold stripes. Yeah,
that's about
I mean, it's fine. Yeah.
See, I don't like
Not the
details. Details suck, Emily. I'm down. Anyway, but I think like for me, there is. It's like I'm noticing there's a trend of white jerseys, and I don't know.
It's a bad idea, guys. We are gamers.
Yeah,
like,
we're gonna.
What are you doing?
Oh my gosh, everyone's gonna be like, "I'm going to Europe. I'm gonna try some donor." Because that's what everyone says you should do in Europe, and you're gonna get fucking sauce all over your shit, and it's gonna be very disastrous. Maybe they were actually thinking about this critically though, because a lot of donor sauces are white, so you know maybe it's better than having like a black jersey or a dark color jersey.
For the white splotch on it. Wow.
It's actually yeah.
All right.
Yeah, FlyQuest dropping their jersey tomorrow. And I was like trying to find anything for this, but like the only confirmed world jerseys are like the T1 and the LPL. But I remember like the Ashley Kang tweet that dropped, which was like the every other year a white jersey or a black jersey wins worlds, and this year we're slated for a white jersey to win worlds. So it's possible that
you have to.
That globally everyone just read Ashley Kang's tweets, and everyone is just gonna make a white jersey this year. We're gonna have to follow this trend to see if if everyone just comes out with a white jersey, then we'll just blame Ashley for this.
We can do another fashion corner where so I will say this, as long as Weibo don't show up in those hideous green jerseys.
I like the green.
You could see them from space. Oh my god.
I like the green.
I just would want it.
Likes the green.
I would just want it the hue tuned a little bit so it's like less garish of a color, because I actually agree that I do like the green, because so few teams do something other than black, white, or blue or red. I think
in China it's red. So in NA it's blue, and in China it's red. Is like the largest defender of colors that are most common. I mean, I also liked I made a lot of jokes about it, but I liked the OMG like jumpsuits, the prison jumpsuits.
You know what we need to bring back? We need to bring back the Gamty Panda sweatshirts. That is like
sweatshirts were probably the greatest jerseys of all time. I'm not even
my lost piece of like LPL merch. If there's like one piece of LPL merch I could own, it would be a Gamty Panda sweatshirt.
Yeah,
like I want one so bad. Those things were amazing.
My favorite is for sure my snake rhinestone hat. Like I have a snake
hat. That thing is sick.
With rhinestones on it. It's the best thing I have. I actually have an OMG. I had an OMG tea set, but unfortunately, everything, because I travel so much, everything in it broke except for one cup. And now I use that cup to drink shots of whiskey, and that is my life. Anyway, we are continuing on.
We will
Okay.
have an update to Fashion Corner where we rank your Worlds jerseys.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of Worlds, we are getting a preview of the Worlds patch for potentially the first time. Any thoughts before we talk about that on the patch itself?
So I think like obviously it's not going to be an exact it's actually interesting because we part of preliminary meetings for Worlds. I guess I can say I'm part of the Worlds broadcast now because that
Yeah,
talent
it's
announcement
been
went out.
announced. Woo! Everyone. I mean, I think it would just be more shocking if you weren't at this point. So yay.
But yeah, I think the big caveat to there are two caveats I'd make to this because we actually got to talk to the balance team a bit just about their opinions on like what they want from the Worlds patch, et cetera, and us kind of asking them questions from a competitive standpoint as opposed to balancing for solo queue, for example, right? And also what they want out of this patch. I do think that we're going to see a lot more dramatic difference at Worlds once teams have chances to, boot camp and you have your scrim pockets develop, especially with most Western teams boot camping in Europe and the Chinese and Korean teams not leaving until they have to, presumably, and then all scrimming each other. I think we're going to see a lot more dramatic changes than what we've seen from this tournament, but you can see a few things that I think are kind of like harbingers of what we will see from Worlds teams, in that I think Sejuani Prio is like through the roof. And so if you look at, again, so I've kind of introduced this in a really winding way. But if you look at if you look at the challengers, because we're talking about the challengers
I was
tournament that's going on.
Trying to segue to talk about the World's patch generally before challengers, but yeah, since we can just talk about both at the same time. For those of you who don't know, America's Challengers has been happening, and America's Challengers is the top two of LLA, CBLOL, and NA Academy leagues or tier 2 leagues. So we sent, and we being NA, sent Dragonsteel and Fear X Starforge, and Fuego exists. There are various teams that are very fun.
Pain Gaming Academy and Kate Stars Academy. I'm not going to talk about the tournament specifically. I'm only going to talk about it in tandem with the patch because I think, especially after talking to devs, their idea for this is, and my question is always, how concerned are you that the teams that qualified are, because there's a chance, because this could be a very dramatic difference. How concerned are you that everyone is qualifying on a patch where you still have lane swaps and 80 mids and all that stuff, and then you're presumably going into a world where there's going to be a lot less of that? I personally, and I let them know this too, this is not something I didn't tell them directly, but like I personally always, even if I don't like a meta going in, don't always like the idea of dramatically changing a patch when everyone has qualified on a very consistent meta, which is going to be a particularly unpopular opinion right now because I think people were very sick of the meta. My response to that is then make the changes sooner in the season so that you already have these things in place prior to Worlds qualification. That's just my opinion. People might agree, disagree, etc. I think if you're going to be patching, if you're going to be patching the game this much and you see a problem with lane swaps and you see a problem with AD mids, do it sooner so that the qualification patch is more in line with what people are going to be playing on it. That being said, their primary goals eliminate lane swaps as like a primary strategy that teams can enact. And then
this is new information to me.
Yeah, exactly.
What
shocking,
crazy
right?
Insider conversation you have had.
And then eliminate 80 mids, right? Like that is, it's very easy to see that these are their goals. You see, you know, Zeri hits. You see, not an 80 mid, but Azir, because of a lot of things that go up against Azir. They're just like, get him out of here. Like, basically, if it's another quirky Azir meta at Worlds, they will have feel like they have failed epically to on like what their goals were for this patch, because they really want mages to be viable again, which is why you see the buffs for, I mean, I think Ori was already rising in priority, but and I think she's going to be pretty hotly contested. But then you have things like Hui, you have things like Ari, you have things like Syndra, which isn't specific on this patch, it's previous, but they definitely want her to rise in estimation as well, and pick rate. So yeah, that is definitely a lot of the goals behind the decision making for the initial like giant Worlds patch, and which is 14-18 is the patch I'm talking about primarily.
Yep.
And then the changes coming into, I think with the changes coming into items as well, you can also see a reflection of that with them trying to touch things like Storm Surge, things like adjusting Shadow Flame, trying to make certain things more viable. And then, as I mentioned, the turret changes. I think for lane swaps, if anyone's heard me talk about lane swaps on cast, or the two of us talk about lane swaps here, I still sometimes don't think, I do think that Riot is still sometimes stuck on this idea that lane swaps are only about avoiding specific lane matchups, whereas I actually don't think that's the case a lot of the time. When I see certain teams swap, it's a lot more about allocation of resources, and then how it affects your mid and jungle actually quite a lot. But that being said, it is a lot more punishing now to swap. So I think it's going to mean that the execution is going to have to be like significantly more clean, which means that we'll see. I do think that a lot of teams will just eschew swapping, especially teams with top laners where you really want to go into a 1v1 because you have a top laner that's like really, really good at counterpicking. But I am curious to see if this does it, if only because I still firmly believe that avoiding a specific matchup, especially like the first 3 levels of that matchup, can still be incredibly valuable, even if you're not fast pushing turrets, because of XP allocation and being able to affect your mid and jungle. And additionally, like, I think a lot of people, I tried to point this out in my lane swap thing in finals, which I know people probably know and watch as pre-show, but I would also implore people when they look at lane swaps to look at whether the jungle is on the weak or strong side of the map in the swap, because that is, for example, that TL swap in game 5 in their first series against FlyQuest with the Lilia. That's what got Umti's Lilia super, super far ahead, which is actually a key component of why that swap worked. And additionally, you could see that they were looking for it. I mentioned this last time, but you could see they were looking for it in finals. They did not get it. FlyQuest called the swap, which was a really good read and adjustment from them, right? Because they'd already seen it. But yeah, that is one of the things I'm actually the most curious about. And the reason I'm pointing it out now is because that's not really something we've seen from the Challengers tournament, right? And it's not champion specific.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a gameplay thing that I am going to be looking out for going into Worlds, whether teams are still going to risk swaps with the increased like it's so much more punishing because of the way that they changed the turrets. You are not going to get nearly as much off of top turret as you are bot.
So I mean, a couple of things. I guess immediately one is Challengers is not really known for swapping that much anyway. So I wasn't expecting a lot of lane swaps, like for that to be an indication of that. Second, I mean, we even talked about the T1 KT game where like KT did the swap basically to get Skarner ahead, and I think a lot of the jungle advantages you can get from swaps are big. In some cases, mid lane advantages are big in swaps. Like there's a huge, like there are so many lane matchups in bot where it's like your window to dive them is literally until level 3. And so if you can stack like 2 waves and dive on that window, then you can. Otherwise, the lane is safe, right? So it's like literally, there are a lot of matchups where that is the case. The other element of it is while they did the like plate fortification increase, they also increased the bonus and MR per place armor and MR per plate destroyed. So for me, that like still kind of counterbalances it. If Riot really wanted to go hard on this, they would just like completely eviscerate it and not like have a balance. But I mean, that would make it that unfortunately makes the game very punishing for teams with winning bot matchup, right? Like, if you have winning bot matchup, then you can just like kill the paper turret, light it on fire, and call it a day. So there is like, again, the other thing is that I think people will talk about less is the 20-second bonus armor and MR per play destroyed is reduced for nearby enemy champions. So you can now do, like, I was actually very critical of these types of lane swaps in the past, which was like sending 4 people to push a turret because of the bonus armor and MR. And I talked specifically about like when you send like support and jungle up to catch the waves so that they're away from the turret. That way like AD can get isolated farm and things like that, or can get isolated gold from, and there will be less armor on the blades, right? But they're now like making it 20 per nearby enemy champion, which makes it a lot easier to run lane swaps with things like Vayne that basically have to group with the AD carry to kill turrets. So there's like a lot of nuance still on the lane swap changes that I think are pretty interesting. We mentioned Sejuani, and Sejuani is always big whenever Jax is big. Jax has a lot of matchups where Sejuani is just like necessary, and Jax got buffed. So Jax is like a very staple ban in challengers right now. And then Yone, of course. It's crazy to me. Yone has been OP for like 3 years, and people don't touch this champ, and we've just ignored it, and we've killed like
kind of insane.
And he's basically just playing into control mages now, and that's like super easy for him. Like his only hard matchup is LeBlanc, and it's like, all right. I mean, he has other hard matchups, but in terms of a lot of stuff we see. Also, why are we buffing and eviscerating Smolder like every patch? It's like, oh, he was strong for a patch. Oh, evisceration. Oh, strong. Oh, dead. Oh, strong. Well, just kill him or let him live. I don't care. At a certain point, just make a decision. Let's be done with Smolder. Let's just accept or destroy him. I do not care anymore. I think he was a mistake to release, but whatever. You know, we have Yumi, so mistakes happen all the time.
But everything's fine. I think, I'm glad you covered Yone, because I actually think he is going to be, like, he, in my opinion, should be pick ban at Worlds. Like, I think he is insane. The other thing I am curious about to see is jungle prio past Sedge, because I think Sedge is going to be super high prio. I also think you're going to have Skarner be super high prio. We're seeing Viego rise in priority through challengers. I actually think that Viego can be super, super good. Again, a lot of this depends on like how teams are willing to flex away from the like they really, really want you to go away from the AP jungle AD mid, which is not something we've been seeing necessarily from challengers teams, which actually makes a lot of sense considering they're coming off of an entire split where that was happening, and their tournament is happening now, right? So you have to make a few adjustments to the new patch. But overall, we're still seeing like, I mean, I don't necessarily like it, but we're still seeing Rumble getting picked. So I think there are a few things that you can take away from this Challengers tournament, and I think Yone Prio is one. I think Varus Prio is actually going to rise, kind of. And I mean, we've also seen that in this tournament. And then Ziggs is still super strong. I think that's another thing that I really want to stress is that I still think Ziggs is going to be pretty big. And his strengths are definitely still a major thing that I think teams should learn to play around in terms of his turret taking ability and how you want to rotate him around the map.
I think it is like though, because you brought up before the worlds to the qualification patch to worlds patch issue, and I think challengers is a kind of like a mini symptom of that, where we're seeing the most picked mids are still Tristana, Corki. The most picked tops include Rumble, but all of those champs have really terrible win rates because they were nerfed. And they're not as good. And like the Maokai nerfs, Maokai also very high pick rate, but like not winning. Brand also like a decently high pick rate. Like I say very high, but there's not the sample size of games is like not insane. Not so it's not like very, oh my god, it's crazy. We're picking like 60 Tristana games and she has like a 20% win rate. What is no? It's 10 Tristana games. Anyway, I guess like the point is that it's like this. One thing that I think is interesting too is like the fleet nerf. I think the fleet nerf is very significant because it definitely makes it so like Conquer is going to be better if you are going to like play the AD mids. Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of interesting things. I think Jinx will be interesting because she hasn't seen a lot of success, but she should be strong.
Lulu is also buffed.
But if the patch is going to be dominated by like Jaxione, then maybe Jinx has less of Yinks. I spent 4 months with Unforgiven, and now I pronounce Jason's wise. Okay. So I think that's going to be a thing.
Oh, one thing I also think, I think Xin Zhao is going to be really strong. These are like weirdly river buffs as well. I think if we're going with no lane swap and both J4 and Xin Zhao coming in with buffs, it's actually kind of a mini 100 Thieves buff, especially for also going back to melee mids. I think Quid's going to be a lot more comfortable with those. And with Jax still super high prio, Sniper is going to be comfortable with that. But there was a game yesterday in the, I think it was the Pain. Yeah, it was the Pain Academy and Vivo Kate Stars Academy second game, where I'm pretty sure the Xin Zhao from Tatu did the most damage in that game. And that's not a harbinger of Xin Zhao as like a massive damage champion now, but I do think Xin Zhao can be incredibly strong.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot of junglers who, even though they qualified on in a meta where you did have a more like farming AP jungle style,
Mm-hmm.
I still think there are a lot of junglers at this tournament that are really, really good at affecting their lanes. And so stuff like Xin Zhao being good, J4 being good could be really interesting to see as well.
Yeah, I mean, I also think like I've actually maintained this for a while is that we're over-indexing on AP jungle because there are a lot of AD junglers that are still efficient when you farm a lot. I actually think Hecarim is arguably one of the most underplayed at the moment. Is it he received a few buffs last time? I know we've talked also on the show how like we keep giving Shen like this random creep. He's like continuing to get buffs. I feel like Shen is just gonna be one of the most disgusting picks at world like sleeper picks at worlds.
I really, really want
Especially
to see
if
it.
we're going
support
like
or-
Yone or some shit. Like Shen Yone sounds disgusting in my opinion, but yeah.
Again, I think I brought this up when I brought it up in one LCS series. I don't remember. Anyway, the Shen, I know Carria played it,
Yeah.
but also shout out to Orca in PCS who was using it as a Leona counter, like even before I think 2 rounds of buffs. Like it was like it was
I mean,
enough patches ago that he was
for a
already
while.
really, really strong into that support matchup. And so with melee engage support still being, I would say, pretty strong. I think Nautilus is going to be, I think we're still going to see a lot of, Nautilus, Leona, Alistar, Rel at this tournament. And maybe like increase Braum Prio depending on how bot lanes shake out. But a cool pick into that Leona is the Shen. And so I would really like to see it as well.
Yep. I mean, I think since we'll have some downtime before Worlds, if we're gonna continue doing weekly episodes, we can also talk about like historical situations where Riot has screwed up on the qualification patch cadence into Worlds. Like 2015 is a big one. I think 2016 was the last time when the lane swaps got nerfed, so it's very topical. So we can have a little bit of fun with that one, talking about transitions and how much they've
Actually,
been
the trip.
Yeah, how much they've been a disaster at times. I think
That was.
Hmm?
Oh no, I was gonna say that was Juggernaut patch on top of, and then Gragas got taken out due to a bug.
Yeah.
I remember you wrote like an entire article on it.
Yeah, I wrote a huge article on because I went to I just got like so pissed off about the press conference in 2015, like the world's press conference. I went and they said this was the most diverse worlds we've ever had. So I did like an in-depth statistical analysis of what you mean by statistically diverse worlds, and it was in fact not diverse. Anyway. So yeah, that's fun.
Oh god.
But yeah, I think we can always like do some deep dives on those. For people who are interested. Let's see. There's more stuff we can talk about always. So I did kind of want to talk, even though we said like, because we have a little bit, I did kind of want to talk about Dragonsteel losing Americas. For those of you who are interested, because Dragonsteel obviously won NACL for us, and Clerky made a tweet about burnout for the collegiate season, which very relevant to a lot of things, especially with the recent CLOL announcement that they're going to drastically cut down on matches. They're basically close to eliminating CLOL for fall. And then the tier 2 restructure, but I think just like initially the idea of burnout in general comes up a lot. I think for college it's huge. because you have a program like Dragonsteel Maryville, and they do their college matches, and there's like a million different college leagues. There's CLOL, there's NACE, there's UCAC. I mean, like, I was talking to my boss, Dr. Haskell, the other day about this, and it was like literally he was listing all of the different leagues we were doing, and I was like, I'm pretty sure you just made some of those up. Like, there's just way too many acronyms. But it's a lot, and then on top of that, they choose to do an ACL, right? Because for your collegiate funding will come from the collegiate leagues, and beating like name schools effectively is what your schools typically care, like your administration cares about. So it's like, if I have a football rivalry between OSU and Michigan, then I will care if my league team beats Michigan as OSU, even if it's literally like my league team is Challenger and their league team is Platt. You know, like
Yeah,
it's one of those. So yeah.
I cannot stress enough, like, just piggybacking on this, I cannot stress enough how much it helps to have any sort of built-in rivalry, regardless of whether people know about League of Legends or care, or like you said, the quality of players you can get for your program. Because all that an administration is going to care about is like, oh, we have a pre-existing rivalry, like, let's do it. Like, let's find a way to beat the shit out of these people.
And when you're trying to speak to school administrators, a lot of it is like, what, you play video games? Isn't that bad? And then it's like, oh, but we can beat this school team that you guys care about in football. And they're like, oh, that's good. Cool, have some money.
Wait.
See, Emily approves as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Beating football rivals. So yeah, that's like kind of a lot of where you will get your administration to care, even if it's like this. But it's like, also, that's why I also am a big advocate for introducing some of the CLOL rivalries into the Challengers League. So like, for example, we could do a lot of storylines with like Fly Challengers and the Winthrop team that existed, right? Because it was actually SLU, but like, maybe that gets too confusing to explain for the average fan. But the point is that if you can introduce like the collegiate rivalries into your broadcast, then you have more of a reason for the collegiate teams to focus on this year too. And because of like the existence of burnout, like a lot of these teams choosing to play during their summer break, schedules get very long. Like some of my kids, they have 9 a.m. classes, and then they are practicing until 9 p.m. So they have like a 12-hour day of basically mentally demanding activity. Like, there was one of my players yesterday said he had an exam at the class and had to do homework and like did all those things, and then he did 3 hours of practice right afterwards. So it's like one of those where it ends up being a lot, because it's like you not only like you get mental fatigue not just from focusing on league all the time, but from having to constantly mentally switch gears and stay on top of a bunch of different things that just like adds to fatigue. So definitely feel for the Maryville guys. I think burnout was definitely a factor and not just like a joke or a meme in this case. Obviously, it is a real thing. It's very rarely an excuse. It's just like, how do we balance that system? And I think that's going to be a big challenge, especially introducing promotion into LCS. So yeah.
Yeah, it's especially like just to point out like a small traditional sports thing that, again, I'm not necessarily defending per se, but I know for a fact that like with tier 1 collegiate athletics, so like NCAA, right, once you get to the top, you are essentially already a professional athlete, and there are a lot of let's just say certain caveats that are being made for you at your school if you are at a D1 football school in the US and you are in a varsity program and you are, like if you are a star player on the Alabama football team, you are going to have certain concessions made for you in regards to your classes and your schoolwork and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That is not made for
No.
gamers.
Not.
Who are essentially playing a like semi-professional professional schedule when it comes to like the amount of practice and trying to balance that out. So and that's even before you include stuff like, oh, we might also want you to spam solo queue and stuff like that. I'm not saying that programs are saying this, but I'm just trying to reiterate the fact that these same concessions that are made for people who are doing like a lot of work in tier 1 NCAA athletics are never going to be made for gamers. And that is the interesting balancing act that I was kind of wondering was was on the horizon for tier 2 Americas, depending on how CLOL, like trying to find where CLOL fits in there. Because if you have a program like Dragonsteel Maryville, who are really, really good, if they end up in that promotion tournament, like how does that even work? Right. And like, how do you solve for that? Because if you're not, first of all, not every player is going to want to promote into LCS. But then additionally, like you can't, it is exponentially more difficult to be an LCS team and a collegiate team and be literally going to school. Like that is an insanely brutal schedule. And like, I mean, and honestly, probably an impossible schedule because again, those same concessions about your classes and your classwork and like all that timing are not being made for you. So yeah.
I would assume what would literally have to happen is everyone would have to apply for a gap year, right? And then, but then the issue is like, okay, so let's say we win this, right? And then we are no longer have like our school because everyone took a gap year. We no longer have our school necessarily supporting us. And we are so we don't have that infrastructure anymore that like really helped us. And I kind of made that argument that schools like Dragonsteel are now going to benefit a lot from the ingrained, we're all in person working together structure that used to be the thing that LCS affiliates had that they no longer have, right? So it was like, okay, so we no longer have that benefit. Do we have to get a new sponsor? Do we have to move out to LA for a year? I think we've talked about this previously about like the challenges of, if we promote, do we move out to LA for a year? Do we invest in housing ownership? Do we rent everything? We have to buy a lot of stuff just for potentially 1 year. It's a lot of stuff to consider, which is why like on paper, yes, promotion, give us back promotion. But also it's like half promotion, right? It's like pseudo promotion if you really get down to it, because there are still like basically your primary franchise teams, right? And then you have the guest spot that gets replaced. So the likelihood that you are, keeping your spot reduces just because there are fewer people who are up on the metaphorical chopping block. So the financial considerations become much more difficult. So from that perspective, it's like, okay, we're also then, and we didn't even get to, probably like my prediction is that Fly and TL are going to be out of NACL next year, because of the fact that they can't promote, right? They can't sell their spots the way they used to. Even if they could sell their spot, no one would buy it. Let's be really honest about this. Sorry. Maybe that was...
I mean, you're not wrong.
Let's be real about this one. So it's like the financial incentive, and then if that's all the case, and you can't promote and you can't do these things, players are less likely to want to join your team. They'll go for a team that can promote, that will give them a chance to be in LCS next year. So you are, like, a big criticism of the promotion structure that Riot put in is that it's like, oh, promotion's good. People want promotion. We're throwing it in. And it's like it wasn't really thought through because it will necessarily exclude some of the most stable supporting structures that exist for tier 2 at the moment. I don't necessarily think that's bad though. I think it could incentivize other stable structures to enter. It just feels like what was settling is being displaced. But in my opinion, what was settling was not a long-term solution anyway, with the problems that we mentioned. So it just kind of depends. We kind of have to stick to this format and hope that it works long-term, but I have no idea. So anyway. Emily's like, I will not, if I speak, I will be in trouble.
Yeah, kind of.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like my analysis wasn't too negative. I just think it's definitely people, when the announcement came out, there were a lot of things that I thought about. And I remember being like, and the immediate reaction was promotion is good for tier 2. And my thought process was maybe, you know? But I think that there's like good opportunity here. But not necessarily for people's current favorites, if we put it that way. So, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yep. Anyway, that was fun. I assume you have to go very soon.
Yeah, I do. Do you want to skip to what Americas? I'm kind of sad we can do more on the Challengers tournament because I actually think next week because I actually think it has been really fun to watch.
Yeah, we'll have the final and everything done by next week. But yeah, we talked about tier 2 restructure, sea-level burnout. We could talk more about tier X.
Yeah.
And or like, okay, let's actually what we'll do is before we leave, who do you think is winning? That's a good one.
Ooh. Trying to. I mean, theoretically, I think FearX could win. I also do like a lot of stuff I've seen out of the Pain Academy team. I think they're pretty fun. I think Fuego has a very fun early game, especially with where they put Matez and where he can be on the map. If you just want to see them go, like, they're a team that just kind of goes balls to the wall a lot of the time. I think ADD is kind of still the same player that he always was, with the similar strengths and similar weaknesses. But it's those three teams, I think, should be the favorites. You could theoretically give the edge to FearX if you want to, just because of the experience on this team. Weirdly, I also think they've kind of, especially from yesterday's performance, they were having a really hard time as to what Fuego brought in the early game. Game 1, you could kind of see the timer on the Olaf.
The Fuego.
They did bring the Fuego. They brought the fire. Oh my god! It just entire mini tangent. When I was in like high school, one of my friends made like a website that was about rumors in our high school, and he called it Casa de Fuego. Anyway, it's great.
That is a very high thing to do.
It's like a very early internet thing to happen. Yeah. I feel like now people would just eviscerate each other on TikTok. But yeah, I think that came down to like there was like one team fight in the bot side tri-brush at Drake where Fuego escaped with like blinking health bars, and you can tell that Philip can just absolutely run over this game. And I was like, oh, next fight, the Olaf is just going to run over the game. And that is exactly what happened. But even in that game, you could tell that they were having a lot of trouble in terms of what Fuego were bringing early. So yeah, I think especially with the composition where they were supposed to make a lot of plays with the bye to Leah, that did not end up happening early. So that's kind of not a great sign for FearX, but maybe they can bring it together. I liked Fuego a lot. I actually think they're really, really fun to watch just because they go ham. They go super ham. And Mateus is just fun. It's fun to watch like where he's going to be on the map. And then today
we are getting by the lower bracket. DK.
So
Vivo Keat Stars versus
Fuego. Paid Fuego.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say I'm really, really curious to see Pain.
Pain FearX is today.
Yeah, Pain FearX. That one's because I think Pain have also looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I am very curious to see how they match up against FearX and whether FearX can kind of take some learnings that they should be able to take from Fuego, especially in the early game. Because I think XU can be a really good jungler when he is affecting his lanes early. We saw that from him when he was on Dignitas, especially with their bot lane. That did not happen yesterday, so if FearX are going to win this tournament, I definitely really want to see their early game shore up a bit.
My complaint with FearX is that currently, right now, it feels like Winsome knows where to be on the map, and he's like making the transitions really fast, and XU's like, I want Krugs. That's my current complaint with FearX.
No, XU never go full soft SOFM.
So Winsome is like constantly like he'll drop vision bot side and then he'll be like really aggressively taking on like his solo lane recalls into like top side or whatever, and then like you look at the mini map and it's like, where is XU? Oh, he's on bot Krugs. So I guess enemy team just clears all of the vision Winsome just put down and we can't do anything. So GG. But yeah, I think it's been like that's been kind of my favorite thing about them is that Winsome, I think more than any other sport in the tournament, like knows where he should be on the map in mid game, and I think that's like the big advantage FearX have had lately. Pain is super fun. I don't know. I am kind of excited about this because I think the NA player attitude towards CBLOL and LATAM teams is very, very entitled.
Yep.
It is very, and like the narrative going into this is like if FearX and Dragonsteel don't show up, it's a big embarrassment, right? And whenever you have to book scrims against like LATAM teams or CBLOL teams, NA teams are like, why can't we get good scrims? I don't understand. It's like, okay. But seriously, like, I don't know.
Amazing.
Man. So, also, did they have Fearless? Like, this is like a serious question.
I actually don't know because I do not watch CBLOL Academy.
It'll be it's even more crazy if they had to like adapt to Fearless draft in order to attend this tournament. I know they're making it uniform.
No, they were in Fearless.
Oh, they were. Okay.
Yep.
So never mind then. But I know that they're making it uniform regardless next year.
Yep.
But I was gonna say if they had to adapt to Fearless on top of everything, that would have just been too crazy, man. Like I don't know. But anyway, I'm having fun watching it. Since there's not a lot of league on anyway, I encourage people to watch it and have a good time.
Yeah, and you might. I mean, it still is Fearless draft, but you can still see certain things sneaking in that we probably will see more of on the World Stage as well. So that's something cool to watch out for.
Yep. All right. Well,
I do have to go.
It is fun, everyone. Emily has to go, and once again, subscribe to the coffee. Hopefully this video will be out on the coffee today, and then it will be out tomorrow on the YouTubes for the public. So talk to everyone tomorrow. Have a good one.
Thank you for watching.